But now let's bring in barrister and UK Lawyers for Israel Charitable Trust Legal Director, Natasha Hausdorff, and she joins me live from London. Natasha, great to see you again. Now, Trump lashed out at Israel, not Iran, Israel, last night after the Islamic Republic breached the ceasefire. Was this misplaced anger, do you think? Surely Israel had every right to hit back at Iran if it wanted to.
It certainly had every right to do so, and indeed from the outset here, Israel's strikes have been entirely lawful. This is part and parcel of the ongoing armed conflict between Israel and Iran. I'd be encouraged to take with a pinch of salt what President Trump says over social media, or indeed in clips of interviews that I think are made perhaps more of by the media than they ought to be. This is a man's actions, I would suggest, that perhaps speak louder than his words. But it is confusing, especially in circumstances where the ceasefire was only broken by Iran. And Israel's response, which had been promised to be significant, appears to have been more muted than we might have expected.
Now, Trump also criticised Israel for going hard before the ceasefire came into effect. But again, if Israel needed to finish the job in time to meet a ceasefire, if it still had targets, military sites, nuclear sites, who knows, that it needed to hit, then again, it had every right to do that before the ceasefire started. Don't you think, in your legal opinion?
That's correct. And I think it also had every right to respond forcefully, as it had promised, to Iran's breach of that ceasefire. And I appreciate ceasefires in this region frequently take a few attempts to come into place. I mean, since then, of course, we've seen relative quiet. I believe there were a few drones, but from Iran, it may have been that they were just slow in reaching Israel proper. The fact of the matter is, though, that Israel would be lawfully able to continue striking military targets in Iran. It has done so, for example, in Lebanon, despite there being an existing ceasefire, because it has maintained the ability and the right to act as and when it sees threats materialising, even in the context of a ceasefire.
We're seeing moves by some Democrats, but also anti-Trump Republicans to call for Donald Trump to be impeached. Al Green lost his bid to have Trump impeached over Iran's nuclear strikes. It was voted down by 128 Democrats to 79. What are the legalities of this claim that Trump had no right to make this decision on his own?
There don't appear to me to be any. It's extraordinary that one sees these party political claims being advanced. We didn't see this, however, in relation to Trump's previous action against al-Baghdadi, against Soleimani, or indeed to Obama's strikes in Yemen, in Syria. It's a very basic matter of US constitutional structure that the president does not need to seek permission from Congress in any of these respects. A full declaration of war would be a different matter, but of course that hasn't occurred as far as America's involvement here has been concerned so far. So a strange attempt, I think, born out of politics rather than a proper application of US constitutional law here.
So what does this come down to? So if it was a war, would he need to get the approval of Congress? Is that where the line is?
For a formal declaration of law, yes, that's my understanding. I'm not a US lawyer, but I've spent a little bit of time in the United States in a national security law context. So certainly that's my reading of it. And from what I can see, that's been endorsed by constitutional lawyers and those that understand the process. I imagine it's one of the reasons that this impeachment attempt wasn't successful. But I think in contrast to previous actions, previous strikes conducted by America under various presidents in the Middle East, it is striking that these complaints would be raised in this context, in the context of much needed strikes on Iran's nuclear facilities, and strikes which I should stress have made the region as well as the world a great deal safer. All of these rhetorical flourishes of starting World War III, frankly, are being proven to be ridiculous. Any steps that minimize Iran's ability to continue to terrorize the region and operate terrorist proxies around the world targeting Western interests, and minimizing its ability to continue to do that in the future under a nuclear umbrella ought to be celebrated as bringing peace and stability to the world.
Just finally, Natasha, we're seeing that the US is trying to encourage Iran now to engage in talks about its nuclear program. It should allow the IAEA to have access to its nuclear sites. Would you be trusting Iran in this scenario?
Well, certainly not. Of course, this is a regime that broke the ceasefire within hours. It is a regime that has consistently used previous agreements with the United States and others to continue to advance covertly its nuclear ambitions. The most important development over the last week is that its nuclear program has been put back significantly. In that context, those negotiations may, of course, continue, but its actions here that I think, again, speak louder than words. And we're never going to have a situation, let me acknowledge, that there is a final nail in the coffin of Iran's problematic ambitions as the Islamic Republic that I'm talking about, unless we see regime change coming from within, an opportunity for the people to throw off this oppressive, tyrannical regime that they have suffered under for some 46 years. But for that sort of change in Iran, I'm afraid all we can anticipate and hope for is a control on its annihilation attempts on Israel and other Western interests. But in that context, there has been significant advantage from what's happened over the last week. That can certainly lead to more productive talks, but I wouldn't trust anything that the Iranians commit to, because there is a track record here of them consistently lying. And this is a regime that uses that sort of subterfuge and dishonesty to advance its ambitions, in particular, the death to Israel ambition. But let's not forget, death to America includes death to the UK, death to Australia. This is a regime that has pitted itself against Western liberal democracies from its inception in 1979.
Indeed. Natasha, really appreciate your time. Great to have you on the show once again. Thank you so much.